Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to be looking at a video put out by Legendary Drops. Now, I love his content. He's a great YouTuber. His content is always well done, well thought out. But I don't usually react to them because they are long. And if I did a proper react, it would be like 45-minute long video. But he did put out a video today that I thought was very interesting, and I wanted to watch it. So I thought I'd make you react to it since I'm going to be watching it anyway. It's called Steam Has an Early Access Problem. And this is something I've been wondering about with the new No Rest for the Wicked game that they put out. I mean, it's in early access. I've bought it. I plan to stream it. But I've seen like rumors online about issues with the game as far as the success. Like they're worried that if it's not successful, they may have to shut down. So I'm kind of curious to see what he's got to say, because is early access causing a problem for a lot of these games? Is it killing the momentum of a big release for these games? We'll see. All right, let's see what he's got.
This is a bit of a rabbit hole, so I'm gonna need you guys to buckle in a little bit. I saw a story that was talking about how Moon Studios, the makers of Ori.
Wait, for the sake of the video and how long it is, I'm gonna put it on 1.5.
And No Rest for the Wicked were essentially going to have to shut down because of negative reviews, and that their CEO was essentially begging for positive reviews to keep the studio open. And I felt like that story was missing a little bit of context. I was seeing these headlines all over the place, but it was all based on just a couple of messages from their No Rest for the Wicked Discord. So I went out and I started doing a little bit of digging, and I ended up reaching out to their CEO, and he reached back, and we ended up having a 3-hour conversation talking about review bombing, media smear campaigns, the benefits and the drawbacks of early access, player reception, and more. This entire story.
Has that game got any review bombs? I've seen nothing but good things about it, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is getting review bombed, and that's what he's worried about.
Was taken out of context. Part of that fault does lie with the CEO and his words, but a lot of it has to do with just, well, legacy media doing what it's doing best, which is not doing due diligence and reporting on things for face value. Luckily for you guys, I already had a video planned on early access. I wanted to talk about some of the scams, some of the abandonware, how we interact and how we interface with these games, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So today we're talking about all things early access. We're talking about the controversy of Moon Studios, how the players have far more power than they realize, and how media spin can get out of control. Yet again, thanks to your support, Displate has reached out with another promotion to celebrate my birthday and theirs.
That's the fast change you got going there.
We're all invited to the party. To celebrate, they are throwing the biggest sale of the year across the entire site. We're talking millions of metal posters, exclusive designs, and birthday surprises with every order, including gift cards and a set of stickers. And here's where it gets even better. When you use my code LEGENDARY or click on the link in the description, you'll unlock the best possible deal during this sale. That means 1 to 2 displays for 33% off, 3 displays for 37% off, and 4 displays or more for 42% off. Whether you're into gaming.
Yeah, I have a couple of displays. They're really good, man. Easy to put up, and they're beautiful and easy to switch out just like that. I love it.
From May 16th to May 26th. So don't wait. Hit the link below or go to Displate.com and use my code LEGENDARY and go grab something that'll actually make your walls look happy. Happy birthday to Displate. No Rest for the Wicked dropped into early access back in April of last year, and it landed with mixed reception. It's an ambitious game from Moon Studios, the beloved team behind Ori and the Blind Forest, and expectations were high. The game is trying to do a lot. It blends action RPG mechanics and Souls-like combat and survival tropes layered onto this painted art style that is immediately recognizable. For a game that is still evolving, early access is the right place. It gives the developers the time and the space to be able to gather feedback, experiment, and grow the game alongside their community. But that model only works if there's trust between the players and developers, and unfortunately, trust is in short supply right now. One of the most powerful tools that players have today is the Steam review system, and I'm a huge believer in it. Steam reviews are the real last frontier where players can voice their opinions and directly influence a game's success or failure. It's front and center for every store page. Developers cannot bury it, platforms cannot censor it, and that rating carries weight. When a game is mixed or mostly negative, potential players will just walk away entirely, and that's a good thing. It forces these developers to take feedback seriously. It gives power to the players. But that's also a double-edged sword, because anybody can buy a game, leave a review, and then refund it immediately. While it shows how long the player had played the game and when they left the review, that thumbs up or thumbs down is still added to the overall score, and that's what's open to abuse. Maybe somebody just hates what the developer said on Twitter. Maybe the community turns on them after a bad patch. Maybe somebody rounds up a few friends and some alt accounts and leaves a pile of negative reviews tanking the score. Regardless, all of these...
Look, I know everybody's getting on like Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb. A lot of these review sites, Metacritic, they'll have articles written about review bombing and how horrible it is. And look, I understand why they feel that way, because it can very much kill the momentum of a game or a movie or a TV show. But there's always reasons behind it. And if you play to your fan base properly, no amount of review bombing from some of these small, minor groups of people are going to hurt your game. It's not. The people that you're playing to, your base, if you're playing to the right people, the people who are actually buy your game, you will be successful. We've seen that. Look at the Lords of the Fallen. Look at what Baldur's Gate 3 did. You build your game and you listen to the people who's actually going to play and buy the game, you will be okay. I understand the worry and the concerns because it can really kill a game if you get a lot of negative feedback. But you have to understand the player base does not trust the game journalism, game media like it used to. It won't. If you have a lot of positive sentiment from the players out there, you'll break through. You'll be successful.
These reviews are permanent unless they're updated. Even if the game gets better, that old criticism stays locked in unless the player takes the time to go back and revise it. And let's be honest, most players don't. That's the problem that Moon Studios ran into. Now, before we dive into this controversy at hand, there is one piece of context that was missing from this conversation and the media coverage.
So are you saying that they created a bad game and they got a lot of bad reviews and they're trying to make it better now? I mean, they want the bad reviews to just all of a sudden go away? What's the deal? Did I miss something?
I think it's it's critically important. It reframes this conversation entirely. After the early access launch, back in April of last year, No Rest for the Wicked went quiet for almost an entire year. During that time, Take-Two had announced the sale of Private Division, Moon Studios' publisher, and Moon took a massive financial risk and bought back their publishing rights to go fully independent. That's not just bold, that's expensive.
Well, that's
no
good.
Safety net, no outside funding, just them and whatever they could sell. During that 1 year period, there were little to no updates on the game or discussions around it. That silence wasn't abandonment. It was them cutting ties, regaining control, and preparing to add more content. So when the Breach update for No Rest for the Wicked finally dropped and a wave of mixed criticism followed, it hit differently. Mahler wasn't reacting to normal post-patch criticism. He was watching months of risk and effort threaten to unravel overnight. After launching their new update, a noticeable wave of negative reviews started hitting the Steam page. Moon had already been fixing the performance issues, they were working on the difficulty and responding to player feedback, but some of those reviews still lingered. Thomas Mahler, the studio's co-founder, took to Discord and Twitter to speak out directly to fans, asking people if they enjoyed the game to leave a positive review.
Okay, this explains why I've seen Thomas Mahler on X coming out and started talking about Steam reviews and how people just do a thumbs down or put a dot in there and how it shouldn't count, it shouldn't be allowed. Okay, all right. This explains everything I've seen. Gotcha. All right.
And then he got a bit emotional. On Discord, he wrote, folks, if you're writing here and you're enjoying Wicked and are excited for the future updates, but haven't left a positive review, it's entirely possible that we won't be around in a couple of months to do anything anymore simply because we got review bomb, which leads to people not buying the game, which means we're...
Why did you get review bomb? He says it here like it's a negative. Why did you get... Were there legit issues with the game at the time? Because it sounded like there was, based on a quick glimpse of what he was, what Legendary Drops were showing here on the screen. If there were legit issues, it's not a review bomb. Review bomb, to me, people use it in a negative connotation now. It means it's false, it's not real. People are going out there and trying to damage you for no reason other than ill intent. And I don't think that's what's going on here. In fact, I don't think that's what's happening a lot of times when people are using the phrase review bomb. So if you made a bad game or your game did not run well and you get bad reviews on Steam or any other platform, that's legit criticism. Even if it's just a dot and a thumbs down, they don't have to come back and say exactly what it is that they're having issues with. Yes, it helps you as a developer. They don't have to do that.
We're not making any money and we will have to shut down. He followed it up with, not sure people understand that they are participating in potentially killing the studio that they want to see succeed by leaving their negative reviews. I get that people think that it's the only way to reach out and get their voices heard, but even companies like GGG won't be able to stomach that review score forever. We've still got a few months left in the oven. If
you're in early access, you can make the argument that maybe you shouldn't be allowed to have official reviews left by fans on Steam or something like that if you're still technically in early review. But at the same time, if you're releasing and you're allowing people to buy the game, even if you're technically still in early review, how are they going to give you feedback? Steam is the easiest way for most people to do that. I mean, I understand, but at the same time, I'm like, dude, come on.
Don't sell copies because people review bomb us, you might just cause our death by leaving that negative review that you posted because you want us to listen to your feedback.
And he's probably really hurting because he's been going off on X. So there's probably a lot of truth to this statement. It's probably a lot closer than most people realize as far as them closing down. They took a huge risk.
Which we do anyway. I'm reading every fucking feedback that's posted either way.
And look, I'm not necessarily, look, I may be, criticizing him a little bit, but I plan to play this game. I've liked what I've seen. I bought the game. Just so you guys know, I have bought this game and I plan to stream it probably this weekend. So just a heads up, I'm giving them crap a little bit, but I'm fully supportive of the studio because I like what I've seen so far.
Those quotes were clipped and circulated by media outlets as if they were definitive proof that the studio was blaming its audience, guilt-tripping players, and fear-mongering about reviews. The headlines basically wrote themselves. Developer claims review bombing might kill their studio. But
how is that wrong?
A bit more complicated. When I saw the word review bomb, I checked their Steam page, and I didn't see any sort of mass-coordinated attack. Honestly, most of them were just fair reviews and negative reviews from players that were upset.
Again, so he's feeding into this. So you can't just blame these articles per se, at least right now from what you've told me. He's feeding into this. He's the one that used the term review bomb, which we all know has, like I've said before, a negative connotation, basically implying that they are fake reviews.
Said about different mechanics and things of that nature, and at a glance, I could understand why journalists called it a false claim. But then I reached out to Mahler directly, and that led to a nearly 3-hour conversation about what was actually happening behind the scenes.
Where we did screw up, like we released No Rest for the Wicked, the Breach update, and we tuned the difficulty a little bit too high, right? And then people complained within a day, we tuned it down, and now people are really extremely positive, right? But these negative reviews that people posted, they will now exist forever, right? And there's just no
Yeah, but most people look at the recent reviews. To me, when I look at reviews on Steam, I look at recent reviews. He's just complaining that negative reviews he wanted to eventually time out and kind of like fade away. I don't know. I mean, you could potentially make an argument about that after a certain amount of time, I guess, maybe, but I don't know.
Mechanisms or nothing in place to keep people updated on what was this review for? You know, is this still applicable even? And
well, there is something in place. You can look at most recent reviews. That tells you who left the most recent review, and that could be after a patch, after an update, after he did what he said, after they overtuned it and they released a patch to fix it. If you see a recent update that was put, a recent review that was put out after this patch, well, there you go. I mean, so there is a method there to separate the two. You can look at most recent updates, and if they're still negative, well, that's a you problem, guy. It is. You've got to do better.
There are still literally like 5-6 year old reviews on Path of Exile, right? And it's like that game that is being reviewed there doesn't even exist anymore. You can't even play that anymore, right? But that always exists now. And so even from the press,
nobody is going to look. I understand he's worried about his job, and I feel for him. I really do, because so far, from what I've seen, even though I haven't played it, but from what I've seen other people play it. I've seen the videos on Steam. I think it looks like it's a fun and good game. So I understand where he's coming from, but nobody is looking at 5 or 6 year old reviews of a game to see if they should buy it or not. They're going to look at the most recent reviews. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is.
Press, right? The press always used to do the same thing for 30 years, right? Like a game comes out, they put a review up, right? But we never adapted to, well, some of this criticism gets patched out fairly immediately, right? And especially with games that are under active development, some of the critiques that people have will not even exist anymore by the time it reaches users, you know? There will be the trolls who just try to get a rise out of you, right?
This is why it's pertinent for people to reach out to YouTubers, to Twitch streamers, to, any platform where people can go and see a game played or get, firsthand feedback from people they trust. It's important for you to work with them, to sponsor them, to ask them to play your game, because that's going to be so much more valuable to a lot of your fan base than some games journalist review that happens to be negative, that, oh, you patched out the negative stuff the next day. At the same time, I could say, well, maybe you should QA your stuff a little bit better. Or if it's still in early access, don't allow reviews, because you're still working on the freaking game. But I still believe word of mouth from player to player to player, or between YouTubers, streamers, and your fan base, that's going to be a bigger draw or a bigger net negative for you than some game journalist review or reviews on Steam. I really do. I think so.
Yeah. Everybody goes through that. And so what I saw is there were some people that actively called for No Rest for the Wicked to be review bombed. Yeah. And I just thought that's shitty, right? Like, because, and it's always the same thing, because Thomas Mahler is a Nazi, right? And it's just, fuck you, you know?
Oh, is that what's going on? Okay. Maybe he's got a little bit of a point here, and I understand. There's nothing you can do about that, though, Mr. Mahler. There's nothing you can do about that. But okay. If it's those types of people that are trying to get you canceled or get your game canceled because maybe you said something that they don't agree with politically, okay, I understand. Okay, I can stand behind you on that one. That one I understand.
Like, I literally all I did was to ask people, like, dude, guys, if you are playing No Rest for the Wicked actively and you're liking it, please leave a positive Steam review,
Yeah.
right? And I thought,
Which is perfectly reasonable request.
that was fine. Like, if
It is.
if people enjoy your product and they really like it, then I think it's okay to ask, because I see this on podcasts all the time, right? Like, people ask you, hey,
Yeah.
like and subscribe, and
Yeah,
you know, add us
perfectly
on this thing,
understandable.
blah blah blah, and that's fine, right? Like, but
There's nothing wrong. Like
but-
a call to. There's nothing wrong with a call to action. And from my perspective, there's nothing wrong for a developer to outwardly ask their the people that are playing their
No.
game, that are active in their community, hey, if you've not left a review on this game and you like it, please help support
That's
us by
fine.
leaving a positive review.
Hell, streamers and YouTube people do it all the time. Hey, if you like the video, leave the thumbs up or like the stream. I mean, it happens all the time. There's nothing wrong with that.
You're not
Right.
asking for money. You're asking for their genuine feedback on the game that they're enjoying, and that
Right.
support does
And it
directly
should leave
translate to
feedback.
more sales. It does.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, they did ask for money. That's why they're charging money for the game, but I get what he's saying.
Mueller was referring to wasn't some grand conspiracy. He had seen some posts online that were actively encouraging review bombing, and he was watching his players were leaving negative feedback, even though those complaints were already being addressed. And the point he was trying to make, clumsily but honestly, is that the Steam score
Okay, if somebody's leaving a negative review about something that's already actively being addressed, if it's a casual gamer, you can't assume that they're going to understand that that's actively being addressed. They may not be keeping up to date with the most recent messages on Twitter or on Discord. They may not know. So you can't make that assumption that they should know. You know what I mean?
doesn't bounce back on its own. Once it drops, it's incredibly hard to recover, especially for smaller studios without massive marketing budgets.
Okay, he's right, but that's why it's so important to get your shit right before you release. It's so important to QA and quality test your stuff. It really is. Or if you, like I said, if you're putting it out in an official early release, they shouldn't be allowed to leave reviews, not official reviews. You can leave feedback on what's working, what's not working, right? Provide feedback, because that's what developers need, hence the early access. But then you have to question, should we have early access then? If this is a problem, should we have early access? Should they be paying people internally to play the game? There's other ways to test your game, to fix your game, to find out if it's overtuned or something's buggy or whatever, without putting it out there, because that's going to make negative, it's going to get negative responses from players.
Or second chances. And that's the real source of the frustration, the permanence of player feedback and press coverage. This is actually what inspired me to make the video in the first place, because I've been increasingly annoyed watching legacy media publish scored reviews for early access games that are clearly not finished, and then they never update them, or they just wait for a 1.0 release regardless
They should not be doing that. Not at all.
of how much time it takes. No Rest for the Wicked sits at a 7 out of 10 on OpenCritic and on Metacritic. All of those reviews are over a year old.
But 7 out of 10 is not bad. It's not bad. Now, it's bad the way IGN does it. But to me, 7 out of 10 is not bad. Not bad at all. Because I use the full scale. Unlike IGN, that never seems to dip below a 5. I mean, 5's got to be the bottom of the barrel for them.
None of them have been updated, even though the game has changed significantly. Those scores just sit there. No corrections, no updates, no responsibility, just a scarlet letter for them to carry into every single future sale. And Mahler,
A part of that is on the developer and publisher to overcome. That's what PR is for. That's what you get people to play your game. You get positive stuff out there. What got my interest in is I saw the trailer for it, for this new release, the Breach, I think it is, that they're putting out there. I saw the trailer. I thought it looked good, so I looked it up on Steam. And I've seen other people streaming the game since I've seen the trailer. So if you can work, and look, those people I saw playing the game were streamers. So that goes back to my point. You need to work on your positive PR to overcome those negative reviews. And one way of doing that is to get people to play your game, sponsor people, go to some of the bigger streamers that kind of have an interest in games like this and have them play the game.
knows that. Moon Studios knows that. It's part of the reason why there is so much tension between them and the press. And that tension didn't start with No Rest for the Wicked. It's the very reason why Mahler took to Twitter following the slew of articles saying that the studio was under threat of shutting down, upset over them taking a conversation out of context and using a couple messages on Discord. Mahler doesn't trust the press. Back in 2022, Dean Takahashi of GamesBeat published an article that was accusing Moon Studios of fostering a toxic, oppressive work culture. He cited 2 former employees, both laid off, who claimed that the studio was encouraging bullying, tolerated sexist and racist jokes, and burned out its workers.
Oh, they're probably from that one group of people that Asmongold talks about all the time. He's like, there's two groups of people that always cause 90% of our problems, and you know, they're incels and Karens, and I'd be willing to bet these ex-employees are probably from one of those two groups of people.
One of the developers told Takahashi, "I've been at multiple studios now, and Moon is the only one that gave me PTSD about the games."
Oh my word. Oh my word. Gave me PTSD. Oh, my job gave me a PTSD. Well, look, I made it sound like it was an STD. Gave me PTSD, not a PTSD. Holy shit. Look, unless you're like a sniper in the military, or you're like an Air Force Ranger or a Navy SEAL or a Green Beret, I don't want to hear shit about PTSD. Have you been in active combat? I don't want to hear shit about PTSD. Stop with that shit.
Industry. I think that they are especially toxic.
Oh.
I've definitely got burned out severely to
just the keywords here, man. PTSD, toxic. Oh, the keywords just tells me all I need to know about this individual.
the point that I would consider a different career path because it was so awful. That article painted
maybe you
Studios
should consider a
hostile
different
place to work,
career path.
highlighting banter between the two co-founders, Mahler, an Austrian, and Coral, an Israeli, where they allegedly stereotyped one another in ways that these two employees found offensive. Yes, offended by the founders' joke.
Do you know how many times I've made jokes about racial stereotypes? My stereotypes, black people stereotypes, Hispanic stereotypes, Chinese, Asian stereotypes. I mean, they're funny. And if you're going to get your panties twisted all up in a wad because you get offended over a joke, dude, you need to seek professional help. You are wound up way too tight. There's the reason why at one of my former employers, my coworkers called me a walking HR violation. And guess what? I worked there for several years. Didn't get fired. I quit to go to get a new job later on down the road, but we all still stay in touch. Okay? If you work with people who know you, you have to kind of understand the environment you're in, though. You can't just go into an environment full of Democrats and just start lobbing some of those things because you're going to piss them off. But at the same time, you can get some of the old-fashioned Democrats, the blue dog type, Reagan Democrats, right? For example, I'm not trying to get all political, but I'm just saying these are the type of people who got a more solid head on their shoulders and can understand a joke when it's a joke. You know what I mean? And not get offended over every little bitty thing.
Joking about themselves. It was described as problematic without context. Two men who had been working together for over a decade, taking jabs at each other the same way that siblings.
It's like best friends, man. You imagine the shit best friends probably, hell, man, we'd say shit to each other probably with other people who are like, oh my God. It's like my kid, my youngest kid. When I hear him and his friends talk and they go at it, I'm like, holy shit, you guys okay? You sound like you fine. You sure? How do you say that to each other? Next day, they're playing fine again. I'm like, what the hell? It's just the way people are. When you got friends, you give them hell, you give them shit. And you know what? It rolls off and you go on.
Would. Moon Studios had responded saying, "We don't believe that the experiences suggested by your questions are representative of the more than 80 Moon Studios team members who are thriving and doing great work every day. We appreciate the irony that we, an Austrian and an Israeli Jew, started this multicultural enterprise. We view each other as brothers. There have been some times that our teasing may have come off as insensitive, and that may have made others feel uncomfortable. Now, I want to be clear. No lawsuits, no formal complaints, no class action, just a word of two ex-employees and a mountain of headlines that followed. Every major outlet
What it was is they were probably fired and they're probably butthurt. So they're probably trying to go get revenge. And they understand how a decade ago, how big this would have been in the gaming industry, putting stuff out like this. But over time, it got less and less impactful because people started waking up to the fact that this is probably all a bunch of bullshit.
Regurgitated this same story without any definitive evidence, and 3 years later, it's been total silence. Not a single word about this since then. That story stuck. It shaped perception. It shaped media perception more than anything else. It built this narrative that Moon Studios was toxic, and It
doesn't surprise me it shaped media perception. Look what they did with Black Myth Wukong. They took things out of context, mistranslated like text, and tried to say that there were bad things going on over at the studios for Black Myth Wukong. Right? I mean, it doesn't surprise me. That's what the media does.
Misstep since then has been viewed through that lens. This is one of my issues that I have with modern media today, and it's once these claims are made, allegations without no legal investigation, that stigma stays. And it tends to frame future coverage of a studio and their games. Allegations become truth.
And it's not just games, it's real world things too, like individuals. Like there's things that can happen to you as an individual because you said or done something stupid that legally you won't have any repercussions for, but it can ruin your life. I tell my kids every day, you got to be careful. Especially when it comes to things that currently are very hot, political, sensitive issues.
in the court of public opinion, especially in the media. I mean, hell, even the Kotaku article that's talking about Mahler asking players for positive reviews dropped the VentureBeat allegations at the end of their article, quite literally proving my point.
You should just ignore anything Kotaku puts out. Put it in trash.
From the reader. We combine this with the fact that Mahler has an outspoken stance against injecting personal politics into their games, and now you have a studio that is just begging to be misunderstood.
That right there is why people are after him, or at least certain groups of people, and then the games journalists. He has a policy of not injecting his own personal politics into games, and nowadays that's viewed as you're a Nazi, which is what they're saying that they're calling him. So yeah, okay, I stand behind him. I really do for the most part. I don't always agree with the whole review stuff. I do think there can be some discussions about some of the older reviews, but again, people aren't looking at the older reviews. They look at the more recent ones. I'd be willing to put a lot of money down on that. So yeah, I can understand. That's why they hate him. That personal stance.
Misunderstood. So with all of that in mind, when Mahler saw the Steam rating dropping, when he saw the negative reviews, the feedback wasn't budging even after fixes, when he started seeing comments online about potential review bombing, when he saw the press corps starting to run articles, he snapped. He responded emotionally, maybe irresponsibly, but not without reason.
He's probably got his whole livelihood wrapped up in this because they took a chance and they bought out, I think, the publisher or whatever he said at the beginning. When the publisher got bought, they bought the rights back. It sounds like they're doing everything themselves. So it's a big risk for them, a big investment. They don't have any outside investment to help them with this. This is all of them. And if it fails, yes, that's their livelihood. And I do understand. And I appreciate that he's coming out and he's being very vocal about it. And not necessarily in a negative way, trashing gamers like some people would. So, that much I will give him credit for. He's being very sincere.
That's the problem with early access, because the margin for error is razor thin. One miscommunication or bad patch could cost you your game. One round of bad press could cost you your studio. And all of it is relative to the size of the studio. And given the fact that Moon Studios is a small studio with no big marketing team or communications team, they're a forward-facing developer. You're hearing from the developers from themselves. Well, you have to be ready to listen to them in good faith because, their message isn't being cultivated. It's raw.
But that's why I said, yes, early access is a risk, and you have to question whether or not you should be putting a game out in early access. Should we even be doing that? And if we do, should we even be letting these games journalists put out official reviews for a game that is still very clearly in development? And if you don't like that, because you probably can't stop them. So if you don't like that, then don't put your game out for early access. You need to hire people internally to play your game and provide feedback. You can do that. You don't have to pay people a lot of money. People will play your game for cheap because they love playing the game. They love having that access. It makes them feel like they're a big time, person, right? They've reached the big time. They're a big streamer or YouTuber or whatever. They would be glad to do it. I'm sure they would. All they need is communication from you. So there's other ways to do it if you want to avoid this whole negative feedback loop because you're in early access.
And in some cases, they're going to misspeak, especially when English isn't their first language.
Exactly. Yep.
Originally I wanted to make a video that was talking about how we perceive early access games and how the more popular it becomes, the more it's going to invite an audience that is looking for a final product, not looking to support ongoing work. I think
that's the problem with early access. You get people to pay for a game, they are expecting a final product. It doesn't matter how many times you say early access. I'm willing to bet a vast majority of your player base is going to expect the game to be perfect, regardless of whether you state it's in early access or not. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. And obviously you don't want to give it to them for free because once they play it for free, they're not going to turn around and pay it. At least I'm willing to bet the vast majority of people, if not everybody, would be like that. They would never pay for a game after they've played it for free. So again, we go back to the whole, you gotta pay people internally to play your game. You do. You can't avoid the negativity with early access unless you avoid early access altogether.
I think Path of Exile 2 is a really good example of this because the game version is 0.2. And they've had some missteps for sure. I'm not going to try to protect them from
Although I've enjoyed that game.
The game is a ways off from being completed. And you're going to see a lot of people that are talking about the game.
I still give I give that game very positive review. I think the game is good. I have no issues with it. Is it perfect? No. Can it get better? Yes. And I realize they're still developing it. But to me, it's still positive. I think it's good.
Like it's a permanent failure. And to some people, it already is a permanent failure in their eyes. And that
to some people, it's going to be a permanent failure just because it's not PoE 1. Because it's different. It's not the same fast pace from what I understand of PoE 1.
Has an impact on that game's future. And I think that's what makes it really tough from both a player and a developer perspective, because I don't want Steam reviews to change, right?
No, I don't
No
have.
shot. I don't want that power taken away from us, but I
Nope.
can also understand how nervous it makes a developer seeing a bunch of negative reviews stick to your page and people trying to use that as feedback, not actually as, just leaving a general review. And I understand why they would want that to change, but I don't want that to change. I understand that pressure. I want it to make them nervous, right? But at the same time,
Developers need to be nervous. If they're nervous, then they're most likely going to do what is in the best for gamers, right? Because if the gamers are happy, they'll end up being happy. Because you make gamers, it's like marriage. A happy wife, a happy life, right? That's essentially the relationship between devs and gamers. Happy gamers, happy dev. But if the dev wants to go out there and combat the gamers, then yeah, you're going to be in for a bad time. You're not going to be very happy with the response you're going to get. It's like, I never tell my wife she's wrong, even though she is. Why would I? It's not going to lose situation for me. Why would I do that?
depending on the size of the studio,
I love you, dear.
we could very well kill the game because of doing that. But at the same time, we need that threat because
Yes.
that's useful to us. It's a balancing act more than
Yeah.
anything else. From our perspective, it's feedback. From their perspective, it's review bombing. That's the miscommunication that's happened here. It frustrates.
Well, like I said before, that's the problem that the overall games community, not community, well, from the devs perspective, the whole games community kind of have come to that any negative reviews, if there's a lot of them, it's automatic review bombing. It's not just unique in games. It's like that with TV. It's like that with movies. Anything where you can leave a review, if there's a lot of negative reviews, they automatically paint it as a review bomb that has negative intentions and that's meant to hurt your product. And while that may be true for some of the reviews, that's not going to be true for all of them. I'd be willing to bet it's not true for the vast majority of them. If you're getting a review bomb, it's almost always because you've done something that they don't like, and this is their way of providing feedback because you don't listen any other damn way that these people try to tell you things. You don't. So how do they get their words across? By hitting you where it hurts, because that's the only time you're going to listen.
Frustrates me to no end that this angle was not explored and that nobody reached out to Moon Studios for comment except for me. The most.
Well, no, because they're all about getting those articles out fast. They want those clicks. They don't care about the truth. They don't care about getting down to the nitty gritty of what's really going on. They want the clicks. They want the rage bait. That's what they're going for.
Gracious YouTuber, apparently. I have no idea. But early access is an odd beast. It's still in its infancy. There's a lot that we don't understand, and there's a lot that the developers don't understand. And with more games going into early access, with more developers becoming far more dependent on the players, and also in a lot of cases on the media, something has to change. We've seen quite a few incredibly
You want to know what has to
successful games that have
change?
gone through early.
The devs have to change. The devs have to change the way they do things. Early access has to go away if they're worried about this. If they're going to continue to release a game in early access, knowing full well that players are going to expect a complete and polished game, then that's on them. They take responsibility for it. If they want to avoid that, like I said, they need to find a way to QA and quality test their game in-house so they can avoid these mass negative review bombs, as they like to call them.
Access. Minecraft was an alpha when it launched. You have Ark Survival Evolved, Subnautica, Warframe, Kerbal Space Program 1, Hades, Slay the Spire, and probably the most well-known example right now is Baldur's Gate 3.
Yep.
Early access has quickly become one of the best ways to make games today, and it makes a lot of sense as to why so many developers are adopting this model and why even more of them are going to be doing it in the future, because by going into early access, you essentially are sidestepping every pitfall of modern game design. You're not gambling with hundreds of millions of dollars on a product you hope people might want. You're selling it to them in real time, directly to your audience, with the flexibility to pivot based on their feedback. If something's not working, you can adjust it.
So why didn't Baldur's Gate 3 have this issue? Did they just have more money? Was the game released in a better state? Or did they start the early access in a much earlier state and people clearly understood it wasn't a final release? I mean, is that the issue? I think if you want to know what can be done, you have to study Baldur's Gate 3 and fully understand what this situation was to see, okay, what did they do right? And why? Why did they not suffer the same negative review bombing? And go from there, because then that's going to tell you, okay, were we just putting out a bad product? Because that very well could be the issue. And once you put out a bad product, once word of mouth gets out, it does not matter how good you make your product later. Players are not going to give you the time of day because you've already put that bad taste in their mouth, whether it be directly or through word of mouth from other gamers or streamers. I mean, just ask Star Wars how things are going, right?
Is working, you can double down. It's real-time validation. You can scale your budget, you can plan your roadmap, and in some cases, you can skip traditional marketing altogether because if your concept truly resonates, word of mouth is going to carry it further than any
Word of
marketing
mouth is the
campaign.
most powerful marketing you can have.
Sometimes that early access will just become a soft launch for something much bigger. Sometimes you'll get one of those weird games that
I need to do another playthrough of this game, man.
just becomes a phenomenon like Pal World or more recently Schedule 1, which according to Gamealytics has already sold 5.4 million copies and pulled in nearly
One person made that game. Holy shit. That dude's rich now. God dang.
$100 million for Tyler. But early access is not all sunshine and W's for players or developers. As Mahler had said, Steam reviews stick, and that permanence is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it holds these studios accountable, but on the other hand, that label, mixed or mostly negative, once it sets in, especially for some of these smaller titles, it can be devastating. A game like Path of Exile 2 can definitely weather the storm. Most people understand the context. They trust grinding gear games, and they know that the game is going to improve over time, but not every studio has that luxury. For smaller studios or solo developers, a negative review score can kill their momentum, funding, and in most cases, the entire project. Now, yes, Steam does show both recent and overall reviews, and yes, it clearly puts a label saying that this game is early access right on the front of the page, but let's be honest, most people aren't reading any of that stuff.
No,
they look at
they're
the
not.
price, they glance at the rating, and they judge the game like it's finished. If it plays like an early build, to them, they're going to treat it like it's a broken one.
This is why I think early access is a bad thing. You shouldn't be doing it. You should not be doing it. Because if you do, you run into these issues. If you avoid it, then you avoid all these issues. That's the only clear way to fix this problem.
And that's where these wires are starting to get crossed. From the developer side, reviews can feel like a minefield, especially when there's no clear way to communicate or get some of those reviews changed, even if they're complaining about something that's already fixed. If they're not visibly responding to player concerns, reviews and sales are going to tank. But when developers do engage and do it sincerely, it can make a difference. That's what happened with Moon Studios. After Mahler had asked players to leave positive reviews if they were honestly enjoying the game, their score skyrocketed.
Oh, look at that. Look at that. It's amazing what happens when the dev communicates and asks people to do something simple. I mean, if they really like games, people will go do it.
It didn't come from a PR spin or marketing spin. It came from being direct, vulnerable, and asking the community to speak up and support them. From the player side, though, the review system isn't just a scoreboard, it's a pressure valve. Players just want to be heard. Steam reviews, unfortunately, are often the only place where we can be. I actually brought this up to Mahler when we were talking about early access because I think that Helldivers 2 is the best example of how powerful that system can be. If Steam players hadn't pushed back, if they hadn't review bombed the game that they love, Sony would have never walked back their forced PlayStation.
Walk back is, didn't they just, once they walked it back to then do what they wanted to do, didn't they just stop the game from being sold in countries where they couldn't connect to like the Steam, whatever, I mean, not Steam, but the Sony PlayStation account or whatever they were trying to do. I can't remember the exact details, but didn't they just stop the deal, like pull it from sale in these countries so they could avoid the problem altogether? I mean, I feel like, yeah, they rolled back, but then they're like, okay, well, if we can't get you to do this, then we're not going to sell the game to you, which to me is just as bad.
Login. It didn't save the game from being pulled from over 180 countries, but it did stop them from forcing players to sign up for Sony's data harvesting. In a lot of cases, our only option is to go after your money. So whether it's a passionate plea from developers.
Thank you. Didn't I just say that like 10 minutes ago? Thank you. That is our only way of getting feedback to you and you taking it seriously and not just calling us incels or bigots or racist or Nazis. The only way to get you to understand our point is to put you out of your job. It's the only way. Now, I'm saying that a little, being a little, exaggerating a little bit. We're not necessarily trying to put you out of the job. Well, maybe in some cases we are, but the only way to get you to truly understand our point is to hit you where it hurts the most, where it hurts anybody the most, and that's in their wallet.
Developers or a protest from players, the Steam review system means something. That's what makes it so powerful and fragile. And while I think it's crucial to have this kind of power, I've also seen it misused, even with good intentions. I've read negative reviews that feel more like love letters. I really enjoy this game. Here are all the things that I love, but here are a few things that I want to fix. No hate, no outrage, just feedback. But when there's no proper in-game system for that and no visible developer response on forums or Discord, the review system becomes the default megaphone because at least there, someone might actually listen. This is also why I want to push back a little on Mahler's perspective, because while I understand the frustration and yes, the danger of seeing these reviews drag down a game that's still evolving, a lot of that negative feedback that I was reading wasn't malicious. It was well-voiced criticism, players that were calling out things like time-gated crafting systems.
Well, maybe Steam needs to put something else besides recommended and not recommended. Maybe there needs to be a middle ground then. I don't know. But what other method do you want us to provide feedback? This, like, as he said, this is the easiest way for us to do it because this is where you're going to pay attention.
Systems, pacing problems, and balance issues that hadn't been addressed.
Yeah, they're
that
legit
kind of
issues.
feedback deserves to be seen. It deserves to stay. If those reviews are what are pushing your team to make improvements, then they did exactly what they were supposed to. If
Yes.
those reviews are reasons why a player quit playing the game, they deserve to be a warning to the next player that comes to buy that game.
Exactly.
Now, from my perspective, the problem isn't that those reviews exist. It's that once changes are made, there's no real system in place to surface that progress unless the reviewer goes back to,
Well, there's a good chance the player might not ever go back and play the game anymore. If they've taken the time to leave that negative review, they may have already written the game off. And even if they haven't, maybe Steam does need to put something in their system so that if they know that they've left a review for, say, this game, but then they continue to play this game, maybe Steam be like, hey, do you want to update your review? Something like that. Maybe they should do something like that. Who knows?
update their initial review, but most aren't going to do that. Not out of spite, just because the moment of engagement has passed and they've likely forgotten. And
Well, most of the time, and you see this is why in some cases you see a lot of negative reviews. People are really motivated to leave feedback when it's negative, when they are pissed off. They are really motivated to do that. When they're happy, they're not as motivated to go to your site or go to your Discord or go to your Steam forums or whatever and leave a thread or leave a review or anything like that. It's negative emotions really drives people more so than positive ones. That's why rage clicks and all this other stuff on the internet, clickbait articles, that's why that exists.
probably won't even go back or even think about it. And that's where I think Mahler's concern is valid. When that
Yeah.
criticism is still visible, but
I
the problem
understand
is
his point
gone,
there.
It creates this distorted picture, but the answer isn't to silence that criticism. It's
No.
to build a better way of showing that the game, like its reviews, can change. A big part of the issue is that most early access games don't offer a built-in way to give feedback outside of bug and crash reports. And when there's no in-game system, no updates to the main menu, players are going to fall back to the one place that they know that they will be seen,
Steam.
which is the Steam page. While I realize that there are Steam forums and Discords where they can reach out to the developers, most players are never going to use these, and you have to adapt to that. And
Yep.
honestly, that's on the developers. If you're running an early access title, communication should be a part of the product. Use your community page, use your Discord, use your Reddit, add feedback tools to the pause menu.
Everybody who's playing a game, they will see that. Not everybody will know that you have a Discord or you have a Steam forum because not everybody's in the know. I don't always think immediately to go to a Discord.
Put developer blogs and announcements right on the main menu. Emulate what Larian Studios did with Baldur's Gate 3, live streams, community updates, Q&As, roadmap
Yes.
discussions.
Over
Let players
communicate.
know that they're not
Over-communicate.
shouting into the void, and give them more avenues to be able to communicate with you. Because the silence, that kills goodwill, and there
Yes.
isn't a lot of that in the gaming industry right now, especially for early access titles. Even the best communication can't undo the damage that's been done by the sheer number of early access titles that went nowhere, or worse, went viral and then vanished. And that might be the core issue here, because the more players that are getting burned by early access games, the more jaded they become. They stop seeing these developers as artists or collaborators, and they start seeing them as risk factors. It's why a lot of players, in a lot of cases, resort to Steam reviews to voice their frustrations, and frankly,
I love that art style,
skepticism is
man.
earned. I mean, Kerbal Space Program 2 launched into early access at
Never even
$50,
heard of that.
unoptimized, unfinished, and riddled with problems. The studio was shut down, the staff was laid off, and the game still sits on Steam this day with no meaningful updates, no refund policy, and no future, just a price tag and broken promises. And that's not even the worst case. We've seen
That game honestly should be removed then. Because if it's in that state, it shouldn't still be up for sale. I'm sorry, it shouldn't be.
outright scams. The Day Before was once one of the most wishlisted games on Steam that turned out to be a flat-out lie. Its developers yanked it from sale days after launch, claimed bankruptcy, and vanished. Luckily, Steam stepped in to give players their money back, but regardless, players are going to remember that. And
Yeah.
then there's BattleBit Remastered, not a scam, but arguably one of the most baffling early exits in recent memory. The game exploded, selling over 5 million copies, and then nothing. The developers ghosted the audience. Promises of updates, more maps, modes, content, and polish, it all evaporated. Just a game frozen in time as
It sold 5 million copies. Why would the devs do that?
they ran off with the money. These are stories that linger. These are cautionary tales, and every time one of these things happen, the player's tolerance for risk starts to shrink
Oh,
more and more. They
That would
become
be something
more
I would do on the screen. I'm horrible at games like this, man. I die a lot. They're fun, but I die a lot.
combative, more skeptical, and more quick to punish even legitimate early access titles that are trying their best. And yet, despite all of that, early access still matters because when it works, it is magic. It gives
Yes.
developers a lifeline. It gives
Baldur's Gate
players
3,
a
for
voice,
example.
It builds a shared experience. Games like Baldur's Gate 3, Valheim, Deep Rock Galactic, and Dead Cells wouldn't be
Oh, I
what
forgot
they are
about
without
Valheim.
it.
Yeah,
This model has
Valheim was
produced
really
some
good
of the most
too.
community-driven and financially successful games of the last decade. But if early access is going to have a future, something
And they're still adding content to Valheim. Such a good game.
has to change. Maybe scored reviews need to be held off until 1.0. Maybe Steam needs to have a visible marker for games that have changed significantly since a review was posted. Maybe players need better in-game ways to be able to send feedback, and maybe developers need to stop hiding behind the idea of early access as an excuse to ship broken, unsupported content. Because what early access isn't or shouldn't be is a shield from accountability. Early access is still young. The system is flawed. The expectations are messy, but it's not broken, not yet. It just needs more honesty from players, from developers, from the media, from everyone.
But it doesn't sound like the players are the issue with the honesty. I mean, the reviews were good from what you pointed out. It sounds like the issue is with everybody else.
Love early access. I think that it is one of the most special and rich experiences players and developers can have in this hobby right now. Nothing beats being able to see your feedback actually shape a game, and nothing beats being able to deliver exactly what players are looking for. On top of that, nothing, and I'm gonna tell you guys this right now, nothing beats being a part of a game in early access and then watching it explode in popularity once early access is completed. You feel like you are a part of that. When Baldur's Gate 3 popped off, I was so proud of Larian, of the game, of being a part of the project, of the entire journey, and it just made the experience just...
Nerd. who's as a gamer, look, I played Baldur's Gate 3 and it was in that early access. Was I proud when it? No. Why would I be proud? I had nothing to do with that. I mean, unless you're one of these guys who gets in at the very, very, very beginning and you're like reporting all these bugs, you're providing all these feedback, then maybe you might feel invested. But I don't know. Most of the people who get into early access just won't play the game. I don't think they're going to feel proud about it whatsoever.
Just that much more fulfilling. I love early access.
Oh,
if I had to propose a solution to some of these problems, I think one, early access games should not have a review score. Because
I agree with that.
First impressions mean everything to players and to customers. If you rate a game a 6, that
when you look at somebody of the opposite sex, you're going to judge that person based on how they look in the first 5 seconds. Now, does that mean you know everything about the person? No, but there is a judgment being made, and you base a lot off of that judgment, right? Whether you want to continue getting to know that person, whether you want to ask the person out, whether you think the person looks like they've got themselves together, right? It's the same thing with games. And these early access, I mean, if their first experience in your game is negative, that's it. You're done. You're done. They're not coming back. I'm sorry. It's going to take a lot to get them to come back. It really will.
Game is a 6 in their eyes, and it's never going to change. Even if you update that score later, it doesn't matter. Maybe they won't even see that update, and that was the one chance that they had to be able to sell that game to a player, and the media ruined it for them. Professional reviewers ruined it for them. I think that parity also comes into question in this because
I think media ruins things a lot less than they used to. I think we're putting way too much credibility on the media at this point. I really do. I think a lot of people understand the game that the media plays, and they don't really pay attention. Most of the people reading the media are probably the ones making YouTube videos about them. Those are probably where most of the clicks come from.
Because when I started looking into the subject, well, come to find out, they don't review every single early access game. They just review the biggest ones.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Well, they don't have all the time in the world, nor do they have all the people in the world. So, I mean, there's only so much time you have. But, you know, I mean, I see your point, but at the same time, I'm like,
fair is that? Not at all.
Oh, no, that's not fair. They shouldn't be reviewing early access games.
2, the other thing is that I think it would be good if there was a flag for the date of review if there were changes that were made. I think it'd be really cool if there was a Steam system that was in place, and this is something that Steam could definitely do, which if a developer fixes a problem, a known issue in the game, and there are a bunch of reviews, a bunch of negative reviews that have flagged that issue, it's sitting right there at the top text, maybe it's something to do with level scaling or loot or whatever it is, then it will actually flag that review so that players can see and say, hey, you know, things have changed since then. I think it also wouldn't be a bad idea for Steam to have a different setting for review scores, where instead of it saying current reviews, you know, mostly positive or mostly negative, and then overall reviews, if instead it was actually by patch, XYZ patch.
Oh, that's actually good. I didn't think about that. I thought he was going a different way with that. That's actually good but again, they have the most recent. So, I mean, most people look at most recent, in my opinion. So maybe they don't need that, but I do think it's at least a good idea.
Have a system for that because they will actually show if a game has reviews from early access. It'll actually show early access review. Maybe
the reviews that you see on Steam, I mean, you could probably dig. Maybe you should be allowed to dig and find all of them. But when you go look at reviews, maybe the reviews it shows you, both negative and positive, should be from the most recent patch that was released. That's not a bad idea. I kind of like that idea. I think that would be potentially a good resolution here.
you, and then there it is right there. And if the game goes into one,
and that would also impact the score of the game, in my opinion. So if you have thousands of reviews and it comes up to a certain score, that's one thing. But then if they implement this fix and they have thousands of reviews, but maybe a few hundred are for the most recent patch, well, those few hundred should be the only ones that taken into account when it comes to the overall score of the game. That way your score, the game score, can fluctuate based on patches and how good the game is at that given time, and it's not bogged down or raised up, by old reviews. So yeah, I like that. I think that's something Steam should do. I like it. Ship it, sell it, send it out the door. I like it.
1.0, it will contrast the two of those. It'll still count them in the overall, which I don't think is fair. But
thank you. I don't think it should.
Something. So they could do a little bit more to be able to better that system. And Steam is great because they side with both the players and the developers in a lot of cases.
Yep.
And they find a lot of really good ways to be able to find a middle ground. There needs to be a middle ground found here because it's going to make it really difficult in the future. Right now, this is the point, the whole reason I wanted to make this video. Early access games are getting more and more popular. Schedule 1 sold in over 5 million copies. That is insane.
That is insane.
AAA level
for one dude.
For some of these.
One dude. Man. If my 18-year-old kid grew up to do something like that, I'd be like, hey, son, would you mind paying your mama's house off? Like, how about a Christmas present for her? No, I wouldn't do that, but I'd be probably as proud as any father could be, man, if my kid did something like that. That's an amazing achievement.
Games that aren't even finished yet. As these start to break into the wider market, as these start to break into players that know that they don't know that they're buying a game. They're not even thinking about the fact that they're buying a game that isn't finished. You're going to run into a lot of issues. You have to do something about that.
Yeah.
You have to think ahead in that case, because I think that as we start to see more of these games released, we're going to continue to see them grow even more and more popular because a lot of people are not really happy with AAA and with a lot of the...
And you've had way too many AA and single A games be super successful. Why would people pay $80 for a AAA game that's going to be, it's going to look nice, but it's going to be very boring and very full of crap, right? Where you can get a AA game like Claire Obscure Expedition 33, man, that game is beautiful. And it's terrific.
Top ends of this industry more than anything else. And they're looking for an outlet. They're looking for somewhere else to go. And they're going to go to these games. We've seen some of these games hit massive viral success.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, those players are just going to play the game that their friend is playing or go to play a game with their friends. And they don't really think about the early access part of it. Nor are they actually going to even engage with the early access part of it, actually give valuable feedback and things like that. The only thing that they are giving that's valuable is their money, which is important. But the other part is really important as well. It's kind of the whole purpose of us getting into an early access game.
Yeah.
Early access is a tool that is still in its infancy, and there are going to be some growing pains. But from my perspective, it's just the best thing in the industry. Some of my most favorite games are early access games. My entire Steam library is...
Look, we like it because we get the game sooner. I get it. But there are some issues that I do wonder if the game industry would be best. It would be best for the game industry if there wasn't early access, because then you wouldn't have all these issues this video just discussed.
It's just top to bottom early access games. I think there's more early access games at any given time than there are fully finished games. But to be honest with you, looking at AAA, I couldn't really tell the difference.
No, you can't. You can't nowadays. That's sad. That is so sad that single A and AAA games are at this point just as good, both graphically and story-wise. Well, they're most of the time better story-wise, but they're just as good as AAA games. It's ridiculous.
I hope that you guys have enjoyed the video. If you guys did enjoy the video, or you guys are enjoying an early access game right now, let me know what that early access game is down in the comment section. Look at me being a generic YouTuber. Isn't that great? Like, comment, subscribe, share the video with your friends, share it on social media. Come follow me on Twitter where I talk shit. And also come watch me on Twitch. Thank you guys for watching the video.
Okay, everything he just said there at the end, ditto. Like, subscribe, comment down below, all that good stuff.
Cool. Stay righteous.
Whoops, I hit the space bar. All right, listen, seriously. Like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. Look, great video. I love this guy. He always releases top-notch videos. He really does. I don't always, react to him for the simple fact that, hey, this video right now is extremely long. So, and that's why. That's why I don't always react to his. So very thoughtful. You're most likely already subscribed to him if you've seen this on my channel, but if you're not, go subscribe to him. I'll put the video down below in the description. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you guys later.